The message arrived at 11:47 p.m. while I was sitting alone in our living room, staring at the empty space where my wife usually kept her coffee mug. She was away on a girls' trip with her friends, something she'd been planning for months. I expected a photo, a joke, or a simple goodnight text. Instead, my screen lit up with 6 words that completely changed the way I saw my marriage. "We need to see other people." I read it again and again, waiting for another message, explaining it was a joke, or that she had typed the wrong thing. Nothing came. After 15 years together, after building a home and a life, she had reduced everything we had to one sentence sent from a vacation she was enjoying without me. I could have called her. I could have demanded answers. I could have begged her to reconsider. Instead, I typed one word, "Done." Then I placed my phone on the table and made a decision that would shock everyone who thought they knew me. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual and started packing. Not angrily, not dramatically. I moved through the house quietly, putting her clothes, personal items, and belongings into boxes. Every photograph, every piece of clothing, every reminder of the life we had shared was carefully placed where she could find it. I wasn't trying to hurt her. I was simply accepting the choice she had already made. Before leaving for work, I contacted a storage company and arranged for her things to be moved. Then I changed the locks, not out of revenge, but because I needed a clear boundary after she had clearly drawn hers. Around noon, one of her friends called me. Her voice sounded confused. "Why are there boxes outside the house?" she asked. I calmly replied, "Because your friend decided she wanted a different life." There was a long silence before she whispered, "Wait, she was serious?" By afternoon, my wife's group chat had apparently exploded. Her friends began calling one after another, each with a different version of the same question. They thought her message was a temporary emotional decision, something I would argue about and eventually forgive. They never expected me to actually accept it. One friend finally admitted that my wife had been talking about needing freedom for months, but she always assumed it was just frustration after a difficult year. Hearing that made something inside me go quiet. It wasn't the message that ended our marriage. The message only revealed a decision that had already been forming without me. While everyone else was trying to convince me to wait for her explanation, I was realizing I had spent too long fighting for a relationship where only one person was still holding on. That evening, my wife called from the trip. The confidence in her voice was gone. She wasn't angry anymore. She wasn't celebrating her new freedom. She sounded genuinely shocked. "What did you do?" she asked. I looked around the house that suddenly felt peaceful for the first time in months. "I respected your decision," I answered. She became quiet. Then she said something I never expected to hear. "I didn't think you would actually leave." That sentence told me everything. She hadn't wanted the consequences of her choice. She had only wanted the comfort of knowing I would still be waiting if she changed her mind. Before I could respond, she lowered her voice and said, "There's something you need to know about this trip." I stayed silent when she said those words. For the first time all day, I wasn't angry. I was curious. "What don't I know?" I asked. My wife took a deep breath and admitted that the message had not been as simple as it sounded. She explained that for months, she had been feeling disconnected from our marriage and had convinced herself that leaving was the only way to find herself again. Her friends had encouraged her to take the trip, clear her head, and decide what she truly wanted. But somewhere along the way, she made the mistake of sending a message she had written during an emotional moment without thinking about the consequences. She thought I would respond with questions, apologies, and attempts to convince her to stay. She never imagined I would take her words seriously. "I wanted space," she said quietly. "I didn't expect to lose everything." I looked around the house and realized something painful. The life she was afraid of losing was the same life she had been willing to walk away from. When she returned 2 days later, she stopped in the driveway and stared at the boxes outside the house. Her friends stood nearby looking uncomfortable because they finally understood the seriousness of what had happened. My wife walked slowly toward the front door, but the key she had carried for years no longer worked. She turned around and looked at me through the window. There was no anger on her face anymore, only regret. When I stepped outside, she asked if we could talk. I agreed, but I made one thing clear. The conversation wasn't about undoing what happened. It was about understanding why it happened. She admitted that she had spent months focusing on everything she felt was missing from our marriage while ignoring everything I had continued to do to keep us together. She had mistaken my patience for weakness and assumed I would always be there no matter how far she pushed me. Over the next several weeks, we had the conversations we should have had months earlier. We talked about the distance that had grown between us, the problems we ignored, and the resentment we both carried silently. I admitted that I had become too comfortable and stopped noticing how unhappy she had become. She admitted that instead of communicating, she searched for an escape.